making a good transition from the top of the backswing is really important, as it enables you to get a consistency in the ball strike, prevents the direction from being wayward. A lot of the time when golfers have a bad transition, they tend to get a mixed array of shots going left, right, heavy, thin, and generally it's down to the fact of whether the hips fire first or the shoulders fire first, or the club indeed starts the downswing. So in this video clip I'm going to try and hopefully explain to you what's considered to be a good transition at the top of the backswing, to help you to hit the ball further as well, as a good transition enables you to deliver much more club head speed to the ball, and a good feeling of a solid strike as well. So to talk about the transition in the swing, we need to look at what we're trying to do in our hips and our shoulders, and we're trying to create a coil, or what we call a kinematic stretch, whereby the hips turn, let's say, 45 degrees, shoulders then turn 80 to 90 degrees, and the difference that you see on the K-vest animation, which is the K angle, is at the moment 33 degrees, 34 degrees. So that's the separation from my hips and my shoulders. And the transition, the main aim in the transition, is not to release that stretch, that tension, but actually to steal a bit more, to actually gain a bit more stretch. And to do that, when I reach the top of the backswing, I need to start the downswing with my hips. And by starting with my hips, I can actually gain and increase my stretch. So the transition is not really to do with unleashing the energy, but to actually store the energy or gain on the energy. So when we take it back, we're trying to make a good resistance in the hips. Now, of course, it depends on flexibility, because somebody who hasn't got as much flexibility as, let's say, like a junior, they'll have to let their hips go a little bit more. So at the top of the backswing, you see golfers with sometimes 10, 12, 20 K angle difference at the top. But regardless of that, all golfers can actually stretch or increase that movement, that angle, by getting the hips to start first. The key, though, is to get some degree of resistance in the hips when you send the club back. So let me just recap. So when we're taking the club back, we're trying to separate our hip turn and our shoulder turn so that we gain a kinematic stretch. And then from the top of the backswing, we're trying to increase that stretch. Now you can see in the animation and on the screen, I'm trying to twist my hips first. I'm trying to get my torso, my pelvis, really working first to gain as much as I can. So when I get to the top, I need to leave my shoulders and my club in that position and allow myself to start the downswing with my hips, then my shoulders, and then my club. So the transition is all about trying to start the swing with the hips. Now, when you move the hips, it's not a sliding movement, it's not lateral, it's rotational. So a bit like if you stood on a cross trainer and you went forward and back, it's movement within a pretty central point. There's going to be some degree of lateral movement, there has to be, but the sensation, and that's the key, the sensation is that it's more of a movement of weight between the front of the feet and the back of the feet. So as I reach the top of the backswing and I create my separation, I'm trying to steal some more. Now, if I go back with my hips as still as I can, well then I can't really start with my hips, because they're locked. That's as far as I can move my hips. So whilst you're looking for tension in the backswing and some form of separation, you don't want too much, because it means then when you get to the top of the swing, if there's too much resistance, I can't start with my hips, so I'm going to have to start with my shoulders. So to recap that, you do need some degree of tension, but you mustn't feel completely sort of paralyzed at the top or just totally rigid. So you need to find out the happy medium between resistance in the hips but not too much tightness. So it needs to feel comfortable, but you have to feel, particularly around your core muscles, particularly the sides, you have to feel some degree of tension, some degree of twist. So what I would do is I would grab a club like this. I would turn my shoulders, allow the club to come behind me, allow my hips to just turn a little bit, and then see if you can get a little bit of movement first. There we go. So I can get my hips going first. But if I resist too much on the backswing, I can hardly turn my hips whatsoever. So that's too much tension. So I need to just release it a bit, feel tight but not tense, and then I should be able to get a little bit of hip start first. If we start with the hips at the top of the backswing, there, we get a nice swing path. If we start with the shoulders first, we get a very much over the top action. So we don't want to come over the top, which leads to pulls, slices, fats, thins. But at the same time, we don't want to be able to be slack at the top. As you can see there, my hip turn's now 74, my K angle's only 7, and now I can sort of thrust my hips around, and then we get into a position where the club gets behind us, and then we have to get whippy hands, and then we get blocks and hooks. So when you take the club back, feel some resistance in the hips, allow the shoulders to turn. Anything of a K angle of 30 to 40 is very, very good. But the key then is to be able to have a freer range of movement so that I can stretch my hips out. Now the top hitters, the big hitters, they can get a K angle of about 40 at the top, but from the top of the backswing with their hips firing first, they can get that straight up to 60. So you're not looking for a huge separation at the top, but you are looking to gain on that stretch coming down, and that's really, really important, to be able to let the hips go first. So too much tension at the top of the backswing, and it's going to start from your shoulders. So those of you who are finding that you're being told that you're coming over the top, you must look at maybe allowing for a little bit more hip turn, get it feeling just a little bit more relaxed at the top, and that you've got a freer range of movement to start with the hips. And the hips rotate, and that's very important. You can see that on the hip K-bar. You mustn't be sort of bumping your hips across, as you can see. There's no turn there, there's no movement. So I'm looking for rotational movement. And that feeling then is of my weight moving from my left toe and right heel to then as I rotate round to my right toe and left heel. So the hips are working back. You might find that your left leg will be slightly inverted. So it won't be sort of bumping across, as you can see the example on the K vest there. You can see how I'm sort of sliding my hips across, and not really much is happening in my hips, whereas there you can see the K angle really zooming up as I twist. So it's the feeling of the weight moving back onto my left heel and not necessarily bumping across. So the transition from the top of the backswing must start from the hips. To be able to do that, you must be loose enough to be able to have hip rotation, but not too loose, which will then encourage separation. And neither is what you're looking for. So you're looking for a little bit of resistance. Yeah, so that's 32, which is quite good. I'm happy with that. But then I want to be able to increase that. So from there, so from 33, I'm looking to jump that up to 40. And it's the hips that start the downswing. What I mustn't do is I mustn't move my hips and my shoulders. I must gain, and that's vital. I have to gain. If I don't gain, if it all moves together, what I get is I get into a situation whereby again I come over the top, over the top. If I move my hips first, I can get the club dropping down on a better path. But if I come over the top of it, with my hips and my shoulders going together, that's going to cause all sorts of problems. So when you're thinking about the transition, I'll say it again, you get up to the top of the backswing, you must start with the hips, not shoulders and hips. Very important. Start with the hips, feel the tension build, and then from that point the shoulders then come down, the arms come down, so you're swinging on that inside path. So it's hips first, shoulders second, club third.